This is Carrie Johnson with the Iowa Department of Management, and I'm just going to review a few of the final checks in this part 5 of a webinar series discussing the administration of tax increment financing in the Department of Management's online valuation system. In part 1, we talked about the background and a little bit of general information about tax increment financing and TIF. Part 2, we talked about how to set up taxing districts, TIF taxing districts, so base and increment taxing districts within the valuation system. In part 3, we talked about setting up TIF areas in the system and then assigning your increment districts to those areas, modifying TIF areas, consolidating, deleting, etc. In part 4, we talked about the calculation of TIF revenue, how TIF revenue is actually calculated and how that's reflected in the reports on the Department of Management system. And in part 5, this is just basically just a reminder of some of the things that you're going to want to double check before you actually file your values with DOM, as far as checks for TIF administration and handling within the system. So to do some checks in the system, it's always wise to run reports, right? So you're going to want to take a look at different reports that exist to make sure that you're seeing the type of valuation and estimated revenue that you expect or that you're seeing on your local system. And within the system, there are a variety of reports that deal specifically with TIF. In particular, there's estimated TIF area revenue reports, either by area name or by number. There is also valuation reports particular to TIF, and then we also recommend looking at the key change reports if you've made any modifications in the system as you're working this year. The TIF Area Increment Valuation Report is a report that's going to show you in your county each of your TIF areas, and within those TIF areas, the increment districts. Remember, base districts would not show on this report, so it would show you the increment districts within each area and the total, and this is the valuation information for those areas. The TIF Area Revenue Report, this is an estimated revenue report that you might use as well as your TIF authorities to get a handle or get an estimate on what kind of revenue the TIF area may be generating based on the current year rates as the best guess. And what this will show is in your county for each and every TIF area, the associated increment districts, right? Their taxable valuation for each of those increment districts, as well as a sum. It's going to show you the estimated net consolidated rate. So the current year consolidated rate in that area, subtracting out any of the debt service or school PEPAL, school ISL that would have been protected from the calculation of TIF revenue. And then doing the simple math, dividing that by 1,000 times the rate, what is the estimated TIF revenue for each of these increment districts, and then in total. Key change reports, if you've made modifications in the system to either tax districts or TIF areas, I do recommend you go back and take a look at your key change reports just to make sure that the changes that you made in the system are reflected in the way that you expect. So in this instance, we show that there was a new base and increment pair that was created, new tax districts, base and increment pair, and this is all the information to summarize what those new tax districts look like. And so you just want to double check and make sure it looks like what you expect. And also with TIF areas, if you created a new TIF area for example, or you deleted a TIF area, that would show up under those key change reports. And this is just going to reflect that, for example, you created a new TIF area. A few reminders, you can't change taxing districts from a TIF base to a TIF increment or vice versa. So if in your 2019 values, tax district 123 was a base and tax district 1234 was a increment, you can't flip-flop them in the next year when you submit your 2020 values. And you can't change a non-TIF taxing district to a TIF taxing district in the next year, or vice versa. So if tax district 123 was a TIF base district in 2019 values, that tax district can't be a non-TIF district in the 2020 values. The system won't accept those kinds of year-to-year changes. As far as final checks related to TIF, make sure that the TIF district valuations, check those to make sure that your software generated amounts equal the amounts manually calculated using the TIF formula that I discussed in part 4 of the webinar series. If a TIF authority requests less than the amount authorized, so we know that we look at what the maximum amount is that a TIF can generate, but a TIF authority may not be seeking the maximum amount. They may be seeking something less than that. So if they are, make sure that you reallocate any unneeded increment value to the base value when you submit your valuations, not after. And make sure any rollback is going to come off the base district first. As we saw when we talked about the calculation of TIF revenue, rollback is always going to come off of the base district until the base district is essentially zero and there's nowhere else for it to come off of other than increment. And also make sure that you've appropriately allocated both the 100% and the taxable value between your base and increment taxing districts by class. If you have any questions at all about setting up TIF districts, modifying or creating or consolidating TIF areas in the system, the calculation of TIF revenue in the Department of Management online system, or anything of that nature, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.